So this is part 3 of our lecture on chapter 45 on the endocrine system. Hopefully this is our final portion. So we left off talking about negative feedback loops using a simple endocrine pathway with that had to deal with reaching the correct set point of pH in the intestines. So in this case, again, the definition of a negative feedback loop includes the fact that whatever response that you're getting from the um, activity of the endocrine system is going to provide the negative feedback back to the stimulus or the original endocrine gland that is starting this pathway, endocrine response pathway. So it's going to inhibit and prevent excessive pathway activity. So in the case of this pH within the intestinal tract, we wouldn't want too much bicarbonate released, and so the bicarbonate serves as a feedback mechanism, and the level of bicarbonate is going to raise the pH to back to the set point, thereby it turning off the endocrine system's response. So these are going to be some other examples of negative feedback loops. This one is controlling body temperature. So in this case, the set point for body temperature should be around 37 degrees centigrade. And so when the body goes higher than that, the temperature goes higher than that, there is a stimulus to the hypothalamus, which in turn is going to put into motion a pathway, a neurohormone pathway that is going to result in the dilation of blood vessels in order to cool off the blood, or, for example, to increase the amount of sweat so that evaporation will cool off the body. So these different mechanisms are going to be controlled by this raise in body temperature until the temperature of the body comes back down to the set point of 37 degrees, at which point the hypothalamus will stop causing the responses to occur. If the body temperature lowers below 37 degrees centigrade, then the hypothalamus has a different response. In this case, it's going to send out chemical messengers to cause shivering to occur, which will help increase the body's temperature, or it will cause a vasoconstriction to occur, where the blood vessels near the surface of the skin contract or constrict, keeping the blood flow more internal in order to keep the body's temperature or raise it up to a higher degree until it gets up to 37 again, back to the set point. We looked already, I'm not going to spend any time going through the regulation of blood sugar, but you can pause this and take a look at this and see if you can talk your way through how negative feedback is going to keep the blood sugar level at around 90 milligrams per 100 milliliters. That is the set point for blood sugar levels in the bloodstream. And the two hormones, again, that are going to be responsible for controlling both the increase or decrease of blood sugar levels are insulin and glucagon. And I'm not sure that we've talked about this, but it's important to remember that a lot of hormones work as antagonistic hormones, so they work as a pair in order to keep the body's conditions in check. So insulin and glucagon are a great example of that, where they work in opposite ways to either raise or lower the blood sugar level. And so they're considered antagonistic, and they're considered a pair of hormones that work to coordinate the correct set point. Another set of antagonistic hormones are ADH, which is antidiuretic hormone, and angiotensin. And these work together to maintain the blood's osmolarity, which is another way of saying how much water is within the blood. So in this case, we have a lot more complicated feedback mechanism, but again, it's still going to be a negative feedback because by definition, we're trying to get the body back to the set point. So it's gone either above or below the set point and has to be returned to that. So in this case, we have different targets in this system. We have either the adrenal gland, which is going to release a hormone to increase water and salt reabsorption, or we can have an actual nephron in the kidneys be a target cell, in which case, again, we're going to be releasing things that are going to increase the retention of water. Another um, site or receptor is, well, actually, the hypothalamus acts as, let me go back here. The hypothalamus is where the receptor is for the sensory input that is telling the body that we need to get back to a set point, that we've moved away from it. And we're going to take a look in just a minute on the role of the hypothalamus because it does play a role in many of the homeostatic endocrine systems. So, but before we do that, we should take a look at positive feedback. And again, there aren't very many examples of this. Most feedback loops within the body are negative. But the one here we have as a simple neuroendocrine pathway is using oxytocin. And so in this example, the stimulus is suckling by a baby, and that sends a nervous message to a sensory neuron, which sends the message to the hypothalamus in the brain, which then sends a message to the posterior pituitary to secrete a neurohormone. And that neurohormone is going to circulate within the body until it reaches a target cell. That neurohormone is oxytocin, which reaches the smooth muscle in the mammary glands, which will then tell those glands to release milk. So we've talked about the hypothalamus and a little bit about the pituitary gland, but we need to really focus in on this because they do play a major role in the endocrine system. The hypothalamus is considered the master nerve control center. It's located in this portion of the brain. It's about the size of an almond. It's a very small little portion of the brain, and it's the link between the nervous and the endocrine system because it actually is part of the nervous system, and it receives nerve stimuli, which is information from around the body about what's going on in the body. So it's taking the measure of different internal conditions. And then it, in turn, will send releasing hormones, or actually will makes a couple hormones that will regulate more hormone release from the pituitary. So located, here we have a close-up of the hypothalamus. Located adjacent or and just below the hypothalamus is the pituitary, which is broken down into an anterior and posterior portion. So the anterior means it's towards the front, posterior means it's towards the back. And the pituitary gland is part of the endocrine system. It secretes a lot of different what are called tropic hormones, which regulate other glands in the body. The next picture is going to show a close-up of, again, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland here. And in this case, what this is showing you, first of all, before we talk about what's going on here, a neurohormone is something that is produced by a nerve cell and secreted into the circulatory system. So the hypothalamus is what will synthesize a neurohormone. The two that it produces are ADH and oxytocin. And again, ADH is antidiuretic hormone, right here, and oxytocin is the one that's going to affect the mammary glands and the uterine muscles. So it's targets. So these neurohormones are actually produced by the hypothalamus, and they are secreted, or actually they diffuse along these nerve axons into the posterior pituitary. And then the posterior pituitary is in charge of releasing those into the bloodstream, where they will then hit their target cells, either in the kidney, mammary glands, or uterus. Tropic hormones are the other type of hormones that are involved within the pituitary gland, and these ones are found in the anterior pituitary. So these tropic hormones are hormones that target other endocrine glands. A tropin, or a tropic hormone, is going to either stimulate growth in the target organ or cell. Tropic actually means nourishment. Or when the other target organ is another gland, the tropic hormones are going to cause them to produce and release their own hormones. So, for example, these are all the different tropic hormones that are released by the anterior pituitary. We have TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is going to be targeting the thyroid gland. So again, in this case, it's going to cause that gland to produce and release its own hormones. We have the adrenal cortex as a target, so it's going to cause that to, it's ACTH is the name of the hormone that is being released to there. We have the gonadotropic hormones like FSH and LH, which are targeting the ovaries and testes. So again, these are part of the endocrine system, so they are going to produce their own hormones and have their own action. Prolactin is another tropic hormone. The melanocyte stimulating hormone here, which is found in amphibians as well. Oxytocin and ADH, antidiuretic hormone. And again, these two are part of the posterior, which is why they're purple, and these are all from the anterior. The one I skipped over was growth hormone, and growth hormone is secreted by the anterior pituitary gland, and it's unique in that it has tropic and non-tropic effects. So it both promotes growth directly, and it also will have other metabolic effects. And we'll look at that in a couple more slides. This is just a diagram, and I believe you can find this in the book. It's figure 4516. And so just take a look at how thyroid hormone is controlled through the hypothalamus. So again, showing